call the September 9th commission of the Downtown Facilities Committee to order. Well, next working this.
That's better. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks very much. Okay, I'd like to call the September 9th Downtown Facilities Committee to order. Changes to the agenda. Brittany, do we have anything that you're aware of? Chair's report. Okay. Basically, we're going to change our focus a little bit, very slightly. Now that we've decided to purchase the other property, we're going to kind of look at the overall project and try to figure out what we want to do and when we want to do it. So that's sort of our charge at this point in time. And we'll get more into that as time goes on through the meeting and through future meetings, I hope. Anyway, the president will be here shortly. She said she'd be a few minutes late. And I guess from that point, we'll go to public comment. Did I see Bob turn in a sheet for public comment?
Good afternoon. Robert Lynch, 175 Gray Road, town of Enfield. Member of the Enfield Town Board. I'm speaking here as an individual today. You have on your agenda an item that would spend $3 million out of fund balance to finance the purchase of the land next to the courthouse, which would be used presumably eventually as a new center of government, downtown office building. I will probably talk to the legislature as a whole at a later time about this in detail, but let me say briefly today, I oppose this. I think it is unwise spending. I don't think we need the land, and I don't think we need the building. 2 years ago, we bought a parcel of land just a block away, and we said at that time it was perfectly serviceable and should be used. I think we should stick with our original decision. There may be some buyer's remorse today because a better piece of land came along. Well, most of us are not entitled to make those after the fact decisions. The county government that has an unlimited supply of money, really, is allowed to do that. And I don't think we should. As everyone knows, I'm a candidate for county legislature seeking a seat on District 8. There are 3 candidates in the running. I know for a fact that 2 of the 3 candidates, maybe all 3, oppose the idea of a new office building, and they oppose the idea of buying this land that we're talking about today. All money is fungible, truly, and I know that we're taking this money out of fund balance. However, I can't escape the realization that we are helped in spending this money by the nearly $20 million in American Rescue Plan funds that we are getting, and 3/4 of that putting into cash for capital. That is cash, this is capital. I guess I'd say, if we have mad money, why don't we spend it a little differently? I know a little parcel of land in Lansing. We talked about it. In fact, we actually voted on it at the legislature a couple nights ago. It's up for sale. It's about $2 million. And you know what? The county could take that land by eminent domain, and it could use that $2 million to help pay for it. And we'd have a county park. And that might be a pretty good thing to have. And the people of this county might get far more benefit from that land in Lansing that we bought than a parcel of land on which we put a building. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, don't see any other public. I guess we'll go to the legislature and get opinions from various committee members. Rich, you want to start out?
Sure. Do you want to talk about the resolution just in general?
We can talk about the resolution since I brought up, and we'll go into other things after.
There is a subject I was hoping the committee could have some discussion on, which is the parcels along Sears Street. In almost every scenario that we looked at, that would be turned into housing lots. And that was within the confines of trying to build the office building on that 400 block parcel. And we're not doing that now, or it looks like we're not doing that. We certainly have more planning to do on what we want to do with the Sears Street parcel.
Sit up in the back.
But I would like us to consider using or going forward at this time with putting together a development package for the housing on Sears Street. I don't see a great advantage of waiting on that piece of the larger parcel. Thanks.
Okay. Mike?
Well, I thought we were going to talk about using the fund balance for the purchase of properties, but Rich has brought up an issue, and I fully understand Rich's position. He's kept the same position since this came on the radar, and that's his district, so I don't blame him for that. But I think it would be putting the cart before the horse if we do anything with that property until we've made a full decision on what we're going to do with a county office building, and possibly if we buy this property, which looks like we're going to do, that's been voted on, property at the corner of Tioga and Buffalo, then I think that since we've got 2 years there, I think we ought to just keep our options open. It may be in the end that we'll be using some of that property on Sears Street for housing. I know there some of the neighbors over there would like it, but we have questions about the red house on Tioga Street. We have questions about the dental building, and I just think it's too soon to divide that and make a decision that we could regret later. In response to a comment in the public that we might have buyer's remorse, I have no buyer's remorse for having purchased the Tioga Street and to Sears Street property, just like the properties on Tioga and Buffalo. Long time on the county's planning, considering those properties, going back to when I chaired the Space Use Committee back in the mid 2000s. And at that time, we couldn't buy the ones on the corner because we didn't want to interfere with the commercial use of the bank building. And I think Key Bank was coming in at that time. I don't think the attorney building was out there for sale at that point. But we've constantly kept an eye on the dental building. We've inquired about that. We had appraisals done of these properties back then. So all of these make sense for us to have, particularly as we want to consolidate offices into our campus in the future. We are the county seat here in Ithaca, and we are in the county seat, I should say, and that's where our offices ought to be.
Anybody else? Deborah?
Thank you, Dave. I have to say that I agree with Rich. I think we should move forward with selling those properties on Sears Street. In fact, one of the reasons that I supported purchasing the corner properties, even after we had purchased the Tioga property, was because the Sears Street properties were so controversial. And buying the corner properties would allow us to resolve that controversy in favor of the residents of Sears Street, to build affordable housing, which is something the county needs, and perhaps to preserve that old red house, which is a lovely historical property, which we would not be able to do if the only property we had was the Tioga property, because tearing down the red house would be an integral part of a plan to build a county building on Tioga Street that was large enough to meet our needs. So all of that said, I don't have any problem with going forward with plans for Sears Street. I don't think that with the two corner properties, anybody thinks we're actually going to need the entirety of the Tioga property that we purchased. Thank you.
Martha?
Thanks, Dave, especially I'm not on the committee, but, you know, been watching this a lot. I agree entirely with Deborah and Rich. We've seen lots of designs of the whole site, and our challenges were always, how would you fit the building in and sufficient parking? I think without having to put a building there, there's lots of room for parking. And I've been over there and, you know, parked, and maybe a dozen cars are there in that big empty lot. I think there's really very sufficient room to put, to take the Sears Street side, make housing that's desperately needed in the community. And, you know, by the way, I think we did have an offer to cover our costs on that land. So it's real money. There's no reason not to sit on getting that funding back to help us pay for this other purchase. I think it would do the community a lot of good. It would help the county budget to sell off that part of Sears Street. Still gives us plenty of space for parking. We don't even need to take down the dental building. We'd have enough parking as it is. Yeah, Deborah, I know. Like, I'm in favor of taking down the dental building, but we don't even have to do that. You could just divide the parcel and still have more than enough space for the dozen or 15 cars that seem to use that extra parking. So I think there's really nothing to be learned by waiting 2, 3, 4 more years. I think it'd be worth getting housing in there and having the cash back for that part of the land.
Thank you. I'll throw in my 2 cents at this point. I kind of think that, I don't know, do we have the scenarios so we can bring them up? I'd like to bring up 9 and 10.
And 10?
Yes. Last I knew, they were a couple of the favorite ones that we looked at, but I think we're going to have to change to a different one because of what we're talking about, actually. There's one that has three houses on it, or 3 duplexes.
I think that's 10. It's the next slide.
Okay. All right, that's one. That's one scenario that we could do on that street. But what I'm thinking about is, before we did that, I'd like to get a better feel for how many people are going to be moving to the downtown facility, the new downtown facility, and how much parking we might actually need before we give up all that parking space. And the other thing that I'm thinking about quite strongly is that that dental building would be a really good place to put the clerk in the interim before we build a new building, because I would require only 2 moves, one to there and one to the new building. If we put her in any other place, it could, she has to move 3 times. And that's pretty disruptive. So that's just kind of what I was thinking. There's been some talk among a couple of us that maybe we could apply a little pressure to the city and get them to clean up the zoning in that Sear Street side if we decide to build housing. And that's another thing that would be really good to get done, because it's kind of a mess down through there. What else I got? Yeah.
This is a good view to look at. Jay, I want to make sure those are 3 legal parcels, right? That's the, for whether it's a duplex or something that's big enough space. Is that right? That we're leaving?
Yeah, those 3 parcels shown there on Sear Street would all meet current zoning guidelines. If we wanted to do something different with a 5 units or duplexes or something like that, bunkered parking was another option. Those would require some sort of variance from the city.
So if you have to, thanks, Jay. If you imagine this thing with just the red building there and just the dental building and all that, like right now, this shows 25 plus or minus spaces. If you take out the big new office building footprint, you can see you have
Still have parking.
plenty of space for many more parking spaces. You just have to restripe it or put curb, a little bit of curbing or bollards or something so they're temporary, so that you can get, like right now, it's just big open space. Somebody's not going to park in the middle of the parking lot the way it is, but it would be really easy to get multiple more parking spaces in this site, even if you're carving off the west side for housing. I really think there's kind of no universe in which I think this isn't enough. So I really would urge that people, even leaving the dental building for the time being, because you're right, Dave, that would be good surge space. But for the time being, this would be plenty of parking. And I think it makes sense and was prudent for a lot of reasons to move ahead with Sear Street.
Okay. Anybody else have a comment?
I think Leslie does.
Leslie? Okay, I can't see her, so.
Yeah, that's why I shouted out.
Thank you. Yeah, I could be supportive of us subdividing the parcel, redeveloping Sear Street now for the lower density housing opportunity, and thinking longer term about other housing opportunities on the Tioga side. If we did that, we don't need to design that now, obviously, but it would want to be rethought. This design shows amassing for an office building style approach. A housing development might be different. It might incorporate parking underneath. And so I don't want to preclude other ideas about what could or couldn't fit here. There are certainly examples downtown right now, like 210 Hancock, that have that incorporated housing and parking all on the same parcel. So there are opportunities here, I think, as long as we're thinking about not blocking off 2 means of egress and things of that nature. Study it a little bit, make sure it'll work for everybody. It'd be great, more housing on Sear Street. I know that parking will be an issue there too, so being thoughtful about density there. But I think there's some real opportunity here for downtown communities. It's not in District 2, but it's right next door. It's very walkable. It's close to downtown, desirable place to live, work, really commutable. So a lot of pluses here, I would think. We just want to be thoughtful for the rest of the community, make sure it fits in with the fabric. Might need to be some setbacks, but incorporating parking and thinking about that long-term, I think the site has the space and the capacity.
Okay, thank you. One of the reasons that I think it should, at least the Tioga Street portion, other than those 3 lots, should be left as parking lot, is down the road, there's less and less parking in the city for our employees, and we're gonna bring more of them downtown by consolidating all the offices into one spot, which is another thing that I want to talk about a little bit. The building that we've seen sketches of is a L-shaped building for the one on Tioga and Buffalo. And I tend to want to square that up and put in a power station that will supply power for the building if something goes wrong and power's gone. And also provide room for the people that are currently in the old jail. And I don't know if we can do this or not, because I don't know if it's in a historic district or not, but I'm kind of in favor of taking down both building C and taking down the old jail. It's not an efficient building, and going forward, I think we'd be far better off to have everybody under one roof. And as long as we're spending this money, we should do it so that it's inclusive of everybody. All the departments that can be there should be there. And I mean, obviously can't move the airport or the health department in there, but, or public works, but everything else can be there pretty much. So that's the reason I'm concerned about keeping the parking lot. The city keeps tearing down parking garages, and closing things off and redeveloping areas, and I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of public parking. So again, that's a little more of my 2 cents worth. Lisa, I don't know if you had any comments you wanted to make.
No comments, just maybe a question. I understand what I'm hearing from many of you about subdividing the parcel along Sears Street. Are you talking then about subdividing it into 3 lots so that you have that, as opposed to that one strip to see?
Right, yeah, it'd be 3 lots, independent lots.
Okay, I just wanted that clarification. Thank you.
And whether they're single family homes or duplexes remains to be seen, but it's just, and where we're at. Mike, thought you raised your hand there for a second.
Well, I did for a second, because you brought up the building that could possibly be on the corner of Buffalo and Tioga. And I just want to say that sketch that we got, it's so ugly. And I hope that, we can consign that to a pipe dream. Whatever is built ought to have some relationship to the historic buildings in the area, not only the main courthouse, but the Baptist church and the old courthouse, Governor Tompkins building here. And so as we go forward, if we go forward with that, we will, I hope, look at something that would make us proud, and not just another boxy modern office building. Something that could look better, and there are examples of that. Simply the sketch for the Tioga Street building was much more in keeping with the historic district. Yeah. And the same with the old, the design for the old library. That was better designed. So I just want to point that out. And I want to say that it was never the intention of the old committee to put a county office building on the Tioga Street property. That was a recommendation that had come forward from county administration after county administration's recommendation for spending a lot of money on the old jail. We kind of scratched our heads about that. And I will say right now, we don't have to have a new county office building tomorrow. We are doing fine space-wise right now, a little tight, and maybe in the old jail and some other places, and certainly we've got to do something about that. But the desirability of bringing offices in that are in leased properties, for example, makes a lot of sense. We had looked at building a center of government on the old library parcel. It was unfortunately bad timing. There simply wasn't any money after the 2008 recession. And so what changed was our ability to consider whether we could do a capital project for a new building. But I'm not in any rush to do anything personally. And I think that we've made some good decisions. As far as the funding, I have had a discussion with the chair of the budget committee, and I'd like to see us talk about allocating the money that we have been receiving from casino revenues over and above what we budgeted for this year, allocating that money toward the purchase of these two other parcels that we're buying. I've never been a person that thought casino revenues were something we should budget because unfortunately they go up and they go down, and we've seen that in the last couple of years. But that would be, we did use the one-time casino revenue money for the purchase of the Tompkins Center for History and Culture. I couldn't get the second word there. Thanks, Rich. And that was a good use of one-time money. And I kind of feel that using the casino money, as far as it would go, would make sense. So I just throw that out.
I gotta say, I agree with that. We can take the screen down now, I think. Thank you.
Hello?
Okay, who's up next?
Well, I'd like to address some of the things that Mike said. I mean, Mike and I did discuss using the casino money. I'm not sure that that's a distinction that would make a real difference, because if we take the $3 million out of our fund balance, and then we get $600,000 more in casino revenue, it's just going to go back in fund balance, as I understand it. So, I mean, whatever we call it, it's fungible money. I agree. This is a one-time purchase. And if to the extent that we have one-time money to make up the difference, that will be great. I also agree with Mike that when we build this building on the corner, and we're not, again, in a huge big hurry to do this, we don't need it tomorrow. When we build it, I would like to see it designed so that it is consistent with and complementary to the historic character of the buildings in that surrounding historic district. And I don't think there's any reason, I mean, we're not wedded to whatever that drawing was that was floated last year or in 2019. So yeah, I don't have a problem with that either. But Dave, you said something that really knocked me back on my heels. You said you'd tear down the old jail. I thought that building was an historic, protected relic of our.
That's what I said. I don't know if it is. Okay. If we can even do that.
I mean, I agree.
That's what I would like to do. Okay, to open that whole area up, because the building is terribly inefficient anyway.
You're absolutely right. And it's going to cost us a fortune to try to make it efficient. But I just don't know Does anybody know, Jay, Jonathan, Lisa, does anybody know if we actually would have the option of tearing it down?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm kind of looking to Arel because I know that there's a lot of vital equipment and linkages in that building that power the courthouse and the downtown complex. So there's that piece of it. I can't speak to the historical designation or anything.
Okay, thank you.
Something that we can look into and see where it's at, see what it would do to the other facilities that are tied into it and what the cost might be associated with that. I think that'd be a good thing to look into if we can actually take it down. If we can't, it's kind of a moot point, but we don't know at this time. So I think it's worth looking into. Martha, you had another comment?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Dave told me that, gave me that idea a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, what? No, but yeah, I can see the wisdom, but yeah, there's a lot to check out. But if that were to take up to put parking in there, that would actually take up a significant amount of the demand that we might relieve the Tioga Street side. Anyway, I would say, there's not a big rush to get out of to build a new building. On the other hand, 2 years until the tenants want to leave, that's just about county light speed, for actually getting ready to do something. And I just have to remind everybody that the driver on this is getting the district attorney into decent space. They're so crowded up there and out of the main courthouse, and getting the county clerk out of the main courthouse too, so that there's a reason to get going, kind of, not to just wait and, start designing in 2 years. I think that would not be the best. In fact, if the court system, if OCA perceives that we're just dawdling, that's when they, kind of get antsy and start, ramping up the pressure. So they might not like that a lot. One issue about the old library site, that whole design, I think, did not have any parking, or maybe like 6 parking spaces or something. So people may forget that was like a nice idea for a building, but it didn't help us. Even it was actually harmful in terms of parking, because we actually had parking in the old library, the bay and everything. So that would have actually reduced the parking we had downtown. As far as the housing, whether it's single family or duplexes or whatever, I would certainly talk to Ithaca Neighborhood Housing Services and see what they're interested in doing, what configuration they think works the best. And then just as far as the design of the new office building, I think that what Holt did was just kind of to see whether, how much square footage could the departments fit. I don't think it was they didn't spend a lot of time on the aesthetics of the building, as I understand it. It was just really, how does it, does this stuff fit on the site? So I don't think a lot of time was wasted on that. So those are just some thoughts.
Leslie, was that your hand up?
I just want to share for both of the properties we've been discussing, the courthouse, the old courthouse site, all of that falls within the DeWitt Historic District. And some of that's most of it is in the National Register. So that entire area, these structures would need to go through a state historic preservation office review if you were looking to demolish. They're in there, they're listed, so you're going to want to check that out. Also, all the way up to our Tioga parcel, half of the parcel on Tioga Street falls in the local designated DeWitt Park. So some of these are on the National Register, and then part of that parcel also falls on local designation. So we would have to have, of course, thoughtful design around anything that's being developed there. And there would be review from, we don't have to have review because we're, acting on behalf of the state. We're a county agency. We are the county, but we would want to be thoughtful and sympathetic to the local context. And that being said, we'd be looking at what's around us and the fact that we are in a locally designated district. So all of the areas we've talked about today, there are some historic ramifications, and we'd want to be thinking about those designations.
Okay, thank you. Leslie, did you have a comment? Rich?
Just getting back to Mike's comment about casino revenue, I kind of like that idea. I understand the money's fungible, but I'm always skeptical that the casino money is real in terms of dependability. And if we have it, if we get it, applying it here might be a useful thing. The other thing I was going to mention is I wouldn't mind if at our next meeting we did a walkthrough of the dental building and the red building. I've certainly walked around them from the outside and looked in, but it might be useful to the committee to actually get a view of what they look like, particularly if we're thinking about a temporary use of the dental building for the clerk.
Okay, let's see if we could set that up. Anybody have anything else they want to talk about on this subject before we move on? Okay. Okay, we have the resolution authorizing the use of fund balance to purchase the properties ID 10352. And I'm going to move it just to get it on the table. Rich going to second. Discussion, anybody? Mike?
Dave, I would plan to bring a authorizing resolution to a BCP about the casino revenue usage, but I don't see that. I don't see a need to actually amend this resolution at all. I think that's fine, because it is, as Deborah said, it is part of fund balance, but it would be, as Rich said, recognizing the nature of the casino revenues as not a stable source of income.
Well, we say it's going to go back in the fund balance anyway, so it's going to supplant the fund balance for whatever amount of money it is. So I think that's true. Okay. Anybody else?
Okay.
Yes.
I see Rick is here. Is there, do we know about how far over budget we are for the casino money?
Yeah, give me a second. I'll look it up right now.
I mean, I think it is true. It's sort of 6 of one, half dozen of another, but it'd be good to just know.
I suppose that we could amend this resolution to include the casino money.
33.
Portion of the total. How does everybody feel about that?
Are we making this more complicated than
Exactly. I'm sorry. I didn't raise my hand. I don't think that's necessary right now. I thought Mike had a good suggestion that when it comes to the place of appropriating monies, which will be BCP, that he can make that amendment there. So I would just as soon move on with, just the resolution as it is.
I do have an answer to your question. We have $933,000 so far this year with just 2 quarters in. Our budget was $675,000 for the whole year. So far, we're exceeding our budget by $258,000. And That's just for 2 out of the 4 quarters being reported so far this year. Anything that comes in the last half of the year is gravy, is extra on top of that 258,000.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. I don't see any further comments, so let's take this to a vote. And let's do a roll call vote. Let's start out with we do it? Okay, Mike?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Let's see who else. Leslie?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so it's unanimous. Okay, we need to do minutes approval for August 10th, 2021. Somebody want to move those, please? Rich? Mike seconds. Changes? Comments? All in favor? Roll call vote. Mike?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Leslie?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Okay, that's all I've got. If anybody else has anything, speak now or forever hold your peace. Rich?
Given our discussion today, could we ask if the county administrator could have an informal conversation with Ithaca Neighborhood Housing to determine whether they'd have interest in participating in development discussions on Sear Street?
I think Leslyn has her hands up.
I'm sorry that I was tardy for this meeting. And I don't know what the nature of the discussion was, but I am much more in favor of a more open process, not just targeting INHS. There are other developers in the area. I know we had a preliminary conversation with INHS way back when, it seems like years ago, just to sort of get a teaser. But I don't want to send a message that we're only dealing with INHS when there are potential other developers in this area who could be doing that. So I don't know what the process will be. To do that, we might look at, Mike Lane might remember what was the name of the RF something. It wasn't an RFP.
RFQ, request for qualifications.
Yeah. When we did the old library, so people just sort of give thoughts and ideas to allow for a more open and fair process.
I have no objection to having the conversation with other developers. I was just suggesting as a starting point to talk about feasibility, but if we want to go another route, as long as we're rooting, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
So what would the direction to county administration be?
I guess we would ask for an RFQ for development of 3 properties on Sear Street.
A request for ideas,
Yeah.
development, what I can't remember. Yeah. Sorry, Martha, I cut you off.
Dave, it was, just to be clear, so you can't see our hands or you can't see us? Is that?
I just saw your hand, yes, okay, sorry.
Okay, I hate to be rude. I don't want to be rude. I think with the old library, we had requests for expressions of interest because that kind of allowed us to get ideas on what the developers would do. It wasn't just, yes, we've built housing before, so we're qualified, but they gave us varying degrees of sketching plans. Now with the old library, it was a much bigger parcel, so it was like a much more open-ended kind of thing. This is pretty, it's pretty constrained as to what the expressions of interest would be, which in my mind is helpful to developers. So they're not spending a whole pile of time doing development, development that might not pay off. But it would seem like, a relatively simple, give us some relatively simple proposal. Yes, we need this much space and we'd like to do duplexes or townhouses or whatever. So, and I think with this specification that it would need to be held and maintained as affordable, say like set at 80%
Yes.
AMI or something like that. So you could package that
Yes.
into a thing and ask for that and see who responds.
So who would do that? Would that be planning?
Yeah, I think they could do that, I shouldn't speak for planning. But I'm thinking that, the housing fund, we sort of evaluate those kind of proposals all the time.
Okay, I don't see a problem doing it that way. Do you?
I just want to make sure, so for those of you who were involved with the old library process, the request for expressions of interest, you were satisfied with that process and the results that came of it, so that we would kind of replicate that with slightly different specifications for Sear Street?
Oh, well, as Martha says, it was a much larger project where they were talking about a number of units, quite a number of units. And we had some, I think we had 4 or 5 come in with ideas. Some of them dropped out. We had some of the neighbors weren't interested in some of it. I don't know if we were satisfied with the process or not, but we got through it on controversial votes.
Dave, may
I
I?
still wish we kept it.
President, go ahead.
So I would say I was satisfied with the process. I may not be happy with the result, but I was satisfied with the process, and particularly for the very reason that Mike just mentioned. And given that we have neighbors on Sear Street, it allows for people to see what are the ideas that might come forward that might be amenable. Because if someone comes forward, if developer Leslie comes forward and say, I want to put, a bunch of single room apartments on there, the neighbors might not be happy, with that. So it really allowed for people to see what were being offered and weigh in. So I'd be happy with that process again.
Okay, so let's do it that way and see where it goes. Martha?
Yeah, I think the process included, they gave us a price. They told us how much they would pay. So I guess as long as we have a clear delineation of how much acreage, how much space we are offering, that's one thing that would certainly help us evaluate which proposal is better. If somebody says, yeah, I'll do three units and you'll have to pay, I'll pay you 500,000, and somebody else says, I'll do 6 units and I'll give you $1 million, then that helps you evaluate. So Leslie is a good point. I'm really glad, the idea of opening up this process is certainly more fair, and it's, the right thing to do.
A couple of other clarification questions. So it would be, because we're talking again about three distinct lots versus one parcel. And then secondly, and this maybe is more of a question for Jay, is that land that we are talking about parceling off free and clear zoning wise, or is there still more that we need to do on that with the city?
Well, right now it comprises 3 tax parcels, and all 3 would need to be adjusted. One of the parcels being where the dental building is. And I think the other lots are like 33 feet of frontage and 40 feet. So we would want to even those out. So I think if we said, here's a our lot on Sears Street, which we would create, what would you do with it? How would you subdivide it? What would you put on it? What sort of variances might you need from the city in order to develop the parcel, how you would want to do it? And then that would be the stepping stone of working with the city to try to fix the zoning to get what we want.
Great, thank you.
I would be concerned too, that if it's too open, particularly where the back line would be, they may force us into bunker parking, which I think would be very unpopular. I don't want to see that happen.
I'm a little concerned that if we give a developer a little bit too much rope, they might try to put a larger building in there that really doesn't fit with what
Well,
we got
doesn't
in
our,
mind.
I'm sorry, doesn't our request pretty much set the parameters of what kind of a proposal we're willing to accept? I think that we can cut the rope pretty close to where we want to end up.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it in three separate parcels, basically separate building lots that, so we maintain control over, what's going in there to some degree.
Dave, do you mean the whole parcel from Sears to Tioga is 3 different lots? We're
No, that western side on Sears Street.
Well,
Yeah, I don't think
the Sears Street side's all I'm talking about, okay, and the way Jay was describing it, I got the feeling that he wanted to give the city the opportunity to decide what that was gonna be, and I don't know if we wanna do that.
Leslie's been waiting.
I just have a few questions. I guess I want to understand, we'd be looking to sell this, yes, to the developer, right? Okay, so then you're gonna have to comply with local zoning requirements, whatever those might be for their proposal. I just want to suggest, and I don't know if we want to go too far into the weeds of the program we're going to require, but if we're going to put requirements on affordability, do we want to put any requirements on home ownership, which is awful hard to make happen, but this could be a right place for that if it can be developed.
I don't know anything about that part of it, so somebody that knows more about it than me can speak up. Go ahead.
Well,
Deb.
yeah, I was going to say, any responsible builder who was responding to our request would know what the zoning requirements are and be responsible for making proposals and implementing them that comply with zoning. So I don't think that's our problem.
And folks to presuppose that we would want to parcel this off if the developer needs more flexibility for building something that's potentially a homeowner occupied dwelling, and or if they would propose something different like townhouse style and then would want them on, and we were flexible to rentals and would want them all on one parcel. I don't know that information. So I don't know if we want to presuppose what we need to parcel off on Sears, or if we want to give them, we're looking to get to this kind of program, affordable units, homeowner units, or rental units. I'm flexible on either, but that might have ramifications for how or what we want to do as far as changing tax parcel lines.
I guess I disagree a little bit, Leslie. I wouldn't want to see us have something that's going to be rental units there. I think that would be a misuse of the county buying this property, and I could see it if it was home ownership. But I don't think we should give it to a developer to rent. We know what the rents are in Ithaca.
So if we, maybe we're trying to design this in with the wrong people in the room.
Yeah.
I mean, might make sense to like take this little problem, take this problem back to the planning department and say, what do you recommend? What should we do? Like if you said it needs to be affordable at AMI, let me say, if you made it, you said it had to qualify for the Community Housing Development Fund. Let's say that's the bar they have to reach. Then they have to prove they could keep it affordable for 49 years at least. Has to be no higher than 80% AMI. Ownership could be, I think it's up to 120 or 100 AMI. Anyway, it's a little higher. But personally, I mean, I guess I would like, if it's ownership, it's likely to only be Habitat for Humanity or Ithaca Neighborhood Housing. If INHS has their land trust program, they're like the only agency in the region that does a land trust. So that might be fine. They might have other ideas. And I would suggest perhaps we take the general question that you want to pose to planning and have them report back to this committee and see what they suggest.
Thank you. That's what I was going to suggest.
Okay,
That, okay, Madam Acting County Chair, for us to bring this to planning.
I'm good with that, sure.
good.
For their expertise on it. Thank you.
Sounds good to me. I don't see any reason we shouldn't do that.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Guess that's about it. That's all I have. Anybody got anything else they want to discuss? Very good. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. And
Thanks,
see
Dave.
you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks a lot.